together, and so if when I raise my hand, it just means, for example, if Gabrielle sees it first, she'll raise her hand as well, and that way they'll, everyone will do it, and then the room will come together. So we won't have to shout, and it'll just be a quiet. So would you like to share a little bit of what you heard from each other? Maybe 2 to 3 people share either something you've written or what someone else at your table shared.
Can I just make a suggestion? Because we're trying to get to know everybody. Before you say anything, just introduce your name and your school. Okay, thank you.
If we have 2, would you like us to go around? Because if
it doesn't matter.
Okay, just whenever we share. Okay, sure. Would anybody like to begin? Just an excerpt of one of the questions you responded to. Thank you.
My name is Shari. I'm from Esperanza Preparatory Academy, and all of us discussed our teaching philosophies, and we talked about how our behaviors and our actions are a direct reflection of the student's success. So Nicole talked about how her delivery and how materials are materials, but it's how you deliver and the expectations that you set for your students, and how her students work until June because of the expectations she has set for them. So they never have any feeling of school's over or any senioritis. And Mark talked about how he sets high expectations for his students, and even though they may not reach that expectation or they may fall short, because they're set and the students try as much as possible to attain those expectations. And then Tara talked about her self-reflective and things that she wants to do well, and because the students see those things, they as well reflect on themselves and how they want to do well. And then I talked about how I have a lot of behavior problems, so I try to teach students that your past experiences don't dictate your future outcomes. And let them know that their expectations regardless, and how I'll even show them my teacher evaluation to show them how I'm reflective as well, to set expectations for myself so they can see something tangible so they can do the same thing.
Thank you, those are really helpful. We have one more, and I like that Sheree, you shared about everyone at your table. So if we have one more, we'll get to hear 4 or 5. Thank you.
So we also kind of chose to break down our teaching philosophy, and many of us here mentioned this idea of persistence and setting high expectations for our students. Some other ideas mentioned were this idea that everyone has this curiosity and wonder that needs to be addressed, and that teachers should see as an opportunity for opening some sort of gateway for learning and creating a love of learning. And I mentioned how I personally want my students to be critical thinkers of themselves and really strive for changing the experiences of members of their communities. And and I'm a promoter of social justice and professional learning, and that's something that I want my students to understand. What does it mean to be a professional learner, and what does that look like? What opportunities does it grant?
Great, thank you for sharing. I would ask if you can have one person at your table collect the papers, and I would love each person to share individually, but because of time we won't be able to do that. So if we collect it at your table.
Me too. I'm the same. I'm not mad at you because I'm gonna read this and go home and win. I can't.
Well, there's things there's a curriculum list day or stuff that I need to do in addition to this for fall.
I can get them.
So it's gonna just manifest, I guess.
Okay.
So at some point,
I'm at a new school, and the principal knows I was in my old school. That's all that expectation that every week, the drama is going to be, and then it's other stuff.
have a classroom anymore.
We don't have a building. Wait, are you at Kennedy?
she's like, I emailed Andy, she's just like, I know it's not.
Is it possible that you're just not going to have school until summer?
Is it, I mean, that's what I was gonna say, is the school even?
Thank you. So we'd like to go back to the curriculum and talk about the goals. So just before I say that, I didn't ask this because of time, but I would have asked, how could you use those questions that you just completed in your classroom and with students? So just something to think about as you think about what's your routine going to be for the beginning of the year, if you don't already have one. But let's dig back into the curriculum and talk a little bit about the goals, and then we'll go back a bit to the framing of the curriculum. What is this curriculum? What's the philosophy of it? What's the background of it? How did it come to be? And we'll ask some of the teachers returning from last year to have some input in that, as well as Lauren will share some. But first, I have at the top students get ripped. I was very excited about this acronym. When I got to the end, I realized that, oh, it made the word RIP, so we could say this. You don't have to use this, but so it's to raise student academic literacy skills through modeling reading and writing strategies about their thought processes that underlie expert reading and writing. And so embedded throughout the curriculum are opportunities for students to practice again and again. What does it mean to be an expert reader, and what does that even mean? What do they do before reading, during reading, and after reading? And what do they think about the ideas? You mentioned could have been a critical thinker. And the second goal is to improve student pass rates on the CUNY placement test. And as we've said before, the curriculum is not meant to be a test prep curriculum, but we are addressing and think that it's fair that students know what the CUNY assessment test is, they have an idea of what the format and the structure looks like, and they have an opportunity to practice it. But again, with that, we're going to go back to the first one, that embedded would be beyond just the CUNY placement exam. And the third goal would be to provide students with more background knowledge through giving them lots of experience with disciplinary content by the time they enter first-year college courses. And the first-year college courses we are thinking about would be Introduction to Psychology, Introduction to Sociology, and other introductory courses. But specifically the psychology and sociology, so that when students enter those classes, they have some kind of prior knowledge that they could access and participate in the class. So we don't propose to be psychologists or sociologists, but we thought this would at least give students an introduction. Nor do we expect you to be put in that position to say, teachers, if you are a psychologist or sociologist, but we have enough background knowledge to allow us to at least introduce or give students an introduction to these areas. And finally, we prepare students for the academic rigor of college by building stamina and providing tools to read longer nonfiction text, relate text to other texts, and write in response to an author's argument, and by instilling self-advocacy skills. And that means we're hoping that throughout the curriculum, students will read longer texts and build stamina in doing that. And you'll have an opportunity today to practice with one of the texts in the curriculum. The self-advocacy skills go back to what Teresa mentioned during her presentation about the habits and minds of being successful in college and what that means. I want to just touch on nonfiction text. With an English background, English teacher's background, sometimes I cringe when I see nonfiction text, so I think about the background of the Common Core and some of the controversy around what students are asked to read. So it just means that we are infusing and supplementing fiction with nonfiction. It doesn't mean, I'm sure you know this already, but just to put it out there, it doesn't mean that fiction is at the sideline. So I would like to invite teachers returning last year, if you would talk a little bit about your experience with the curriculum, but Lauren, I'd like to invite you to first.
Well, I think like in terms of framing the course for your students, that was a really good issue that was brought up, and that's been something that you know, we've really worked with. So this is my 5th year with the program, and I think that, you know, it comes up every year, but every year I think the curriculum gets better and better, so it becomes something much bigger than, well, you're meeting this, you know, you're like the middle third students population and you're meeting these criteria. It's much bigger than that, right? I mean, you're really teaching a transition course, and which means that in transition course, when they get to college, they're going into these content courses like psychology and sociology, where it's all about content. They're not learning any of these skills that they're going to need to address the content. And so this course is really using the content to teach these skills about how are you addressing, how do you learn about a subject that you might not have any background knowledge on, or how do you address a text that's longer, you know, an assignment that's 2 pages, right? So what are those skills, so that when they get to the content, they have that tool belt of skills that you've worked with them on. In terms of framing the course for them, I know that's something that some of you who have worked with this course have really perfected. So I would ask if anyone wanted to share, like, how do you talk to your students about this course so that it's not something where, I think Chris, you mentioned, like, well, you don't want them to think like, oh, I'm in the, you know, the dumb class, which no, it's a very difficult class. You know, but how do we address that so students understand that as well? Does anyone want to share that? No.
So if part of this helps a lot with my school because there's not this sense that they're programmed into this like special in a negative connotation sort of way. They all want to be in this class. The kids who are in AP want to take this because they find out that this is, I pitch it as being, it's a college preparation course. You may not get your AP credit, but you're getting access to materials that college students are working with and that they're reading. So there is a bit of that, which plays a role. In terms of their scores, we're not super transparent at my school about giving them their scores as soon as they take the placement test. So when they ask me about it, I go, you know, we don't have those just yet, but don't worry about it. I'm going to make sure that, you know, you take the test that you need. We're going to get you. It's going to be great. And so there's a lot of that really positive talk around them just working and working and working, and that I'm advocating for them all along the way, and they, you know, they buy into someone caring for them. And so it's not so much about, you know, well, am I done? Can I get out of this? And I'm like, no matter how you look at it, you're stuck with me for the year, and you might as well be on my good side and do your work. And so it's like, that's kind of how it works. And because the majority of the students do buy into that narrative, the few kids who don't, when they realize that they're the only ones on the outside of it, they get on board pretty quickly. So I really do think that it's about how you sell it.
Is there anyone else before we get to anyone else that wants to share how they've kind of grown?
Well, I mean, I also focus on the career part. Like, I know it's a college course, but I have a lot of kids with the dialogue, I'm not going to college, why not be here, I'm not going to college. And so I kind of take what you were saying, take the skills that they will need in a college class, but you also need that as a career. The interviewing ones, the listening ones, the speaking stuff. And so I really try to hone in on the word career as well. It's not just a college class, it's also life.
Well, I actually focus on my experience being a CUNY, part-time CUNY faculty, and I think that goes a long way in selling this program. So they get to realize that this is big stuff, because if you really go to CUNY and you don't have the pertinent or requisite skills, you're going to have to do this all over again. And I think that in itself is such a big deal.
That's a really good point too. I mean, you know, so this course was originally developed the psychology course was originally developed by a Queensborough Community College professor who taught this to her remedial reading class, her developmental reading class. And you know, she created it thinking of, instead of just having like random readings, which a lot of developmental teachers do, and I taught developmental reading and writing as well, and
you know, there's like a textbook, and so it's like, okay, well here's some random reading, and here's some random reading, and, you know, the students weren't connected to it. So she said, well, let me embed these skills in like a bigger theme, and so students could see that things connected. And I know you do that with your classes. So that's how it originally started, and then when I came on, we kind of revised it, and kept revising it with feedback from all of you who are teaching it. You know, Trisha has taken this course and taken it to like such a bigger level, and you know, so much better, I think, than it's been ever, and has worked with teachers not just in New York City on it, but around the state. So she has seen it in the classroom as well. And so I think it's at a level now where in the past, every unit ended with a CUNY placement exam, like passage, writing, and so that it did maybe feel like, okay, you know, there is this test that you're taking. But Tricia has revised it in a way that there's a lot of other writing assignments in here. There's a lot of other types of assessments. It's not so heavily focused on that CUNY placement exam. Like, we kind of put those in the appendix so that you can bring them in as you want. And so I think it becomes more of, this is a course that's preparing you to succeed in your first year, second year of college, right?
So it's holistic.
Yeah, it's holistic, right? It's the skills they're learning will help them to pass the test, and yeah, you will have to do a little bit of preparation for it because you don't want them going into that test cold. But the skills you're teaching are the same skills that they will need to succeed on that test, and that test, right? Those are the skills, especially the writing test, which we'll look into. But those skills are really needed in their first year college courses. So it's like that continuum of skills that you're building for them. So it's really beyond that exam, where yeah, that's one step that they have to take, but the year-long course is what will really prepare them for passing, being prepared, feeling confident. I think that's one of the things, like going into these courses feeling like, okay, I have a little bit of background knowledge, I know how to approach a difficult text, I feel more confident in my writing, right? It's that confidence that is going to help them seek out help when they need it and perform better. So that's kind of an end goal.
Just a couple quick points. One of the things I did when I taught this course for the first year was over the summer I had written to the students, and a lot of them had summer bridge programs before they started at CUNY or wherever they were going. And I asked them to share with me, and I did this at the end of the year too, share with me something to tell the incoming class about the course and about the influence it had. And I ended up getting emails sporadically throughout the year where, oh, we did this reading in my psych class, and I was like, oh, I know this because Ms. Soto taught it. And every time I got one, I shared it with the new class. And so they sort of love that they got to be part of this like legacy of learning, which is kind of how I spun it. And the kids really like that. And I also tell them, insofar as like this test portion is a part of it, and this is where I think like the official philosophy in my school, and they get a little upset, but I'm like, my job isn't to teach you how to pass this test. My job is to teach you, prepare you for thinking critically and reading well. And if you can do those things, you're automatically going to do better on the test. Right. And my hope is that when you start as a college student, you don't freak out and drop out. That's my goal. It's not about you getting 100 on the Regents or passing the placement. It's I don't want you to drop out in your first year. And so they really work towards trying to feel more confident about that aspect.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for any student. I mean, I think some of you might even be teaching this to all of your students, and so I think, then you're really not framing it as this is you're eligible in this bracket, but it's really like this is a college level type of course, college level course, and you're learning things that are going to really be you're going to see again at college. So, Tara.
I was going to say I agree with what you just said, because like in my school, we're constantly talking about the fact that our top students are our top students. So when they go into the outside world, they've now become, in a lot of cases, the bottom students. So, like what you just said, is even though there's a target audience, it actually applies because they all need it.
Right.
And they all benefit from, you know, the material and the skills and the learning.
Right.
And they all can do better in their, you know, post-secondary education. So I think that's really important to identify the fact that for a lot of us, the population that we're dealing with is a population in need as a whole, even though we have this identified.
Thank you. Anything else, anybody? Any questions or comments?
Thank you, and there was something, I'm sorry, your name again? Robin. There was something you said about the glad you raised, which is the career piece. So it shouldn't feel two ways. One, that only students who say they want to attend college could be a part of this course. I think it's about respecting what a student wants, what their family wants, but at the same time, presenting college as an option. So I think that's really key to raise. And also having students see it not as test prep. That's important to me as well, working on this, that it shouldn't feel like you're in this class because you have to pass a test, but that we're presenting the skills like Natalie said, embedded. What we'd like to have you experience now is one of the literacy tools used throughout the course, especially after students have read an article, a nonfiction text mainly. It's called the discussion journal, and it's meant to so it addresses all of the strands of literacy, the reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So students, I'm not going to go into exactly everything right now by telling you, but to have you rather experience what it's like to complete a discussion journal entry. But first, and this is something that students will do prior, so if this were class now and we're talking about the discussion journal, they would already have read this text. But because you're experiencing it for the first time, we're going to give you about 10 to 15 minutes to read the text and then present you with the discussion journals, and then I'll stop there and tell you what the next steps are. Yes. So give us 10 to 15 minutes again for the reading portion. So if I were teaching this in my class, I'd remind students to practice the reading skills that they know, or I'd use this opportunity to model a before reading strategy, a during reading strategy. So I might model annotation, but according to the way the lesson, or the way the unit, is designed, students would already this is lesson 4 and 5, lessons 4, 5, and 6, or activities 4, 5, and 6. Students would already by this time have been exposed to annotation, what it means, and some examples of annotating. So I would just suggest to them at this point, remember, use your annotating skills before reading and during. So it would take about 10 to 15 minutes.
Yes.